Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Mark van Ramenam.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a pleasure to be here. But I have a confession to make. So I live in Australia, and Australia is literally in the future. So it's already actually the 12th of February in Australia. So as a futurist, I feel very much at home down under. So when a few days ago, I got onto a plane late in the evening, flew 14 hours, and landed in San Francisco at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, I had traveled literally into the past. I felt very confused. But I must say, since then, I've been into a Waymo self-driving car, and I've seen that San Francisco very much is in the future, which is great to be here. So I'm very excited to talk to you about how to thrive in this intelligence age that we are currently approaching. So I am Dr. Mark van Ramenam. I am a strategic futurist, and I help organizations all around the world understand how emerging technologies are changing their business, changing societies, and changing our personal lives. I consider myself an architect of tomorrow, so I would like to help everyone to become also a futurist, so that together we can build a thriving digital future. I've authored several books, and my sixth book, I've literally just finished coming over here, and I've integrated some of my concepts from some of my research from my new book into today's talk. So you're literally the first persons in the world to hear about the research that I've done and collected over the past years. Now, what I also find important to make you aware of is I consider myself as an optimistic dystopian. Which is a bit of an oxymoron. It helps me understand both the good, the bad, and the ugly of emerging technologies. Because I believe that if we want to thrive in a digital future, we have to know both the good side of technology and the bad side. So in today's talk, you will come by both my optimistic and my dystopic side to help you hopefully inspire for a thriving digital future. Now, in today's world, we are experiencing so much disruption that I think it's important to be aware that what we need is resilience. And there's disruption not only from a technological perspective, but also from a political perspective, from a geopolitical perspective, from a climate change, and they're all sort of converging into this perfect storm that we have to deal with. So resilience is going to be one of the key characteristics moving forward. And to help you understand, I would like to start with a personal story about resilience. Because apart from living in Australia, I'm also a Dutchie, and as we Dutchies do, we like to cycle. So about 14 years ago, I set about cycling around an entire continent, and I cycled around Australia in 100 days. And the idea of the challenge was to raise money for a children's cancer fund, and we raised about $25,000, and we cycled around Australia in 100 days, which was almost 9,000 miles that we covered in that short period of time. Now, I can talk for hours about this journey, because I have tons of stories and anecdotes that I think you would very much enjoy, but I won't do that today. But one of the key things that I took away from this journey is that what I needed to complete that journey was I needed perseverance. I needed resilience to move forward when the going was getting tough. I needed to be flexible, but I still needed to have this long-term purpose of reaching our goal of cycling Australia within 100 days. And I needed to have the discipline and the positive attitude to continue pedaling and creating that momentum to moving forward to achieving our objective. Now, what I didn't know at the time, but what I know now, is that cycling journey is very much a mirror for how I think and how I look at the future, and how I see the future as a futurist. Because if we want to survive and thrive in this very challenging times, we need to have this resilience. We need to have this perseverance to continue going when the going gets tough. We need to have this adaptability to change, but still have our long-term purpose in mind. Because the future is rapidly approaching, although some might ask you, where is the future? Some of you might remember this. This is the Jetsons, one of my favorite cartoon series from when I was a kid. It sort of reveals a little bit about my age. But the question is, if you see this, where are the flying cars? Where are the schools in the air? You know? They were all promised by us, by the Jetsons, but we don't have them yet. Or do we? Because the future is rapidly approaching. And we are currently on board of a bullet train that has no intention of stopping, is actually speeding up. And as a society, we have to figure out how to deal with that change. And that change is happening because of the convergence of so many things and so many different technologies. Because we don't only have artificial intelligence coming, we also have other technologies, and they're all converging and they're also feeding into each other. That really is changing everything. To a certain extent, we're actually moving from Moore's law, which sort of said that every 18 to 24 months computing power would double, to hyper Moore's law, which currently means that computing power is doubling every 6 months. And at the same time, the cost for compute is dropping tenfold per year. These are disruptions and changes that we have never experienced as humanity. And we need to understand how to deal with that. Because the world is going through a digital renaissance. And this is not a renaissance like the European Renaissance from a couple hundred years ago that took 100 or 200 years. This is a renaissance that will take 3 to 5 years. And within those 5 years, will completely disrupt society as we know it. And that's going to have an impact on everyone, especially also on the insurance industry. And one of the main things that I'd like you to take away from today's talk, that if you want to deal with this vast amount of disruption, we need to achieve a gestalt shift. I think it's one of the most beautiful German words, but it basically means we need to see the world from a different perspective. It's like this famous duck-rabbit illusion. You can either see a duck or you can see a rabbit, but you can't see them both at once. And how many of you tried? Probably quite a few. But what you want to achieve is you want to be able to see the world from a different perspective. You want to go through this gestalt shift, so all of a sudden the world looks different from you, and you're better capable of dealing with this disruption. Because the world is going through a phase transition. It's a bit like supercooled water. Supercooled water can still be liquid at -1 or 2 degrees Celsius. But then all of a sudden, one change, and the entire river freezes over. And that's the same thing that's going to happen in our global society in the next 3 to 5 years. For the next 2 to 3 years, it seems like not much is happening. But towards the end of this decade, everything will change. Because that Jetsons era actually has arrived. And when I was driving in this robotic autonomous car, and I actually felt more safe than with an Uber driver, I really noticed that it is here. And no, this is not an actor in a suit. This is an actual humanoid that you can purchase for roughly $20,000 and can put to work in your office, in your home, or wherever you want. That's the future that is here today. So welcome to the intelligence age. You have made it. So now let's have a look what's on the other side of the fence. To understand what's going on, I think we need to look at how many different technologies are currently converging. And in my book, I cover 8 different technologies, from brain-computer interfaces that will help us think to computers, to spatial intelligence, which will really power up a hyper-realistic metaverse, to blockchain, which will validate and verify all the data that goes underneath it, to synthetic biology, to really recreating life itself, to quantum computing that will help solve the world's difficult puzzles, as well as crack all encryption in the meantime, to 3D printing that will disrupt geopolitics and globalization, and robotics that will change our workforce. Now, underneath all of these technologies, artificial intelligence is the most foundational technology that will cover everything. So I want to talk a little bit about AI, what it is, what it means, and how it's going to have an impact on your industry. So let's dive in. Now, to understand where we're going, we need to know where we're coming from. So we need to literally take a step back. And we need to step back and go back around 80 years to 1950s, when Alan Turing had the idea of creating so-called thinking machines. And he wanted to create these computers that could be as intelligent as a human being, and he envisioned it. He could create that within 10 years. If you think you have heard that story before, it is because it's probably in the news right now with a lot of big tech companies saying that they want to and will create artificial intelligence within the next couple of years. Back then, it took a little bit longer. In fact, it took 80 years to get where we are now, and since then we've had quite a few AI winters where not much happened. But in the past decade or so, we have moved to deep learning, which has resulted in all kinds of new breakthroughs. And as a result of this, I would like you to take a different perspective on intelligence itself. Because the parochial view is that intelligence sort of moves from the newborns to sort of Einstein, and there's nothing much in between, and it really puts humanity as the center of the most intelligent beings that are around there. And I would like to question that, because I think we need a more cosmopolitan view, where intelligence moves from the mouse to the chimp to the newborn to humans to whatever upper level of intelligence we might have. Because I believe there is no upper limit to intelligence. And that's both super exciting and very, very frightening. Because what does it mean when an alien intelligence that we're creating ourselves enters our society that we no longer understand? So in order to understand how to deal with that, we need to have a different perspective. We need to go through that gestalt shift of what that means for society and for your industry. At the same time, this artificial intelligence will also contribute, research states now, around $20 trillion by the end of this decade. That's in 5 years. So, as Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase recently stated, he said that AI will be as disruptive as the printing press, the steam engine, electricity, computing, and the internet. And I think he probably meant all of these above. Because that's how disruptive artificial intelligence, together with all the other technologies, is going to be. And as a consequence, what we can see is that we are in an arms race. And I think the launch of DeepSeek a couple of weeks ago, that's caused so much chaos here in Silicon Valley, sort of shows you that we are in an arms race. And yesterday we had the AI summit in Paris, and the UK and the USA decided not to sign the AI declaration because they rather run a little bit harder in this arms race. Well, I would argue collaboration across the world would be much better. Because AI doesn't know borders, and I think it would be a wise thing to do as humanity to work together when we're creating artificial intelligence. Now, you might think that artificial intelligence is all about these large language models such as DeepSeek, ChatGPT, Llama from Meta, etc. But actually there are a lot of more applications. And I won't go into depth about it, but I think it's useful to sort of briefly touch upon them, what these applications are. At first, we have pattern recognition. We can use AI to understand the data and understand what's going on, and, for example, know when your customers are going to churn, and to be able to take action accordingly. It allows you also to understand what's actually in the data, so that we can classify the data and take action, and use that information to make future predictions of what is about to happen to your customer base, to society, to your organization, etc. And once we have that information, we can make recommendations. Like your Netflix, people like you watch this. Or like Amazon, people like you bought this. Very useful for consumers, but also for organizations to know what to target and how to consume the new services. Then the next thing I think is really interesting is the autonomous automation. Self-driving cars like Waymo, humanoids active in factories around the world that operate autonomously without any humans involved. Then we get our large language models, the content generation, whether it's text, audio, video, entire virtual worlds. We can now create them simply by talking to the computer. And we have the user interaction, where we can talk to the data that we have within our organization, and we don't have to learn data analytics, we don't have to learn how to program. We can literally ask the computer and get an answer back based on the data that you put in. Fascinating. And if you look at some examples within your industry, I thought MGT Insurance is a really interesting one because they are a surplus lines insurance company for SMEs. And what they've been doing is they have using various applications that I've just mentioned to streamline the entire underwriting process. to make the claims process and a lot more accessible so that SMEs, small companies, can have access to your products. A great way of using this technology to create new products, to target new markets, and therefore have a positive outcome on your bottom line. If you look at two of the most important applications of AI, I think in last year, these were large language models. And there was so much news last year, it was incredible. Especially for a futurist, I sometimes struggled staying up to date. Yeah? If I was on a long-haul flight without internet, by the time I landed, the world had changed again. But this year, it doesn't seem anything is stopping, because this year, it's all about AI agents. Agents that can work autonomously, solve complex problems by working together, often with an AI manager on top of that to sort of streamline what's going on. And it can help solve some of the most complex problems that we thought were only meant to be solvable by humans. So here we have a technology that can help us solve really complex problems previously not solvable by AI, but now it is. And that's one of the reasons why that's possible, because computers now speak our language. Whether it's English or Mandarin or Arabic or Hindi or Dutch, I can talk to a computer in my language. And that's a game changer. Because up until 2 years ago, if you wanted to talk to computers, you had to learn the language of the computer. You had to learn how to program. You had to learn Python or JavaScript or whatever these languages are. And you had to understand how to deal with the computer. Things have changed now. The computer now talks our language. And that's a fascinating development. And a lot of companies around the world are embracing this technology to completely change their business model. One of them is JP Morgan, and I've mentioned them already before, because JP Morgan spends roughly about $17 billion a year on integrating new technologies within their organization. And one of the things they created last year was a product called LLM Suite for all their 50,000 staff. So they've combined all the data that they have within the organization into a large language model and created almost like an AI research analyst for all their employees, on demand, in their own language, and their own background, expertise, whatsoever. So they basically doubled their employee count from 50,000 to 100,000 simply by creating a fine-tuned large language model based on all the data that they have within the organization. A fascinating example of how you can use the content that you have as an organization and make it accessible to anyone in your own language, in your own level of expertise, so you can do whatever you need to do at your own pace. Really great example. Now, McKinsey did the same thing. McKinsey created Lily. And for those who have dealt with strategy consultants, they like to create PowerPoints. And these PowerPoints are generally very complex and very detailed. So even the AI struggled to understand these PowerPoints. So it took about a year before the AI was fine-tuned enough to really take effect. But since then, the productivity of McKinsey consultants, which are already sort of at the highest ranking productivity in the world, grew by another 30%. Because they made all the content from the past 70 years available across the globe for all employees and all clients, having a really positive impact. Now you might think, well, it's nice that JP Morgan is doing that and that McKinsey is doing it, but these are multi-billion-dollar companies. But I'd like to argue against that, because I have done the same thing. I have created a digital twin of myself. Was the first person in the world to do this, end of 2023, and it allowed anyone to talk to my digital twin via text, audio, and video in 29 different languages. And the good thing is, about a digital twin, you can make yourself look a little bit younger. So what I did, I used all my content from the past 12 years, about 6.5 million words, everything I've said in the context of my work, my podcasts, my articles, my books, everything, I put it in there and you can query it. You can talk to it in your own language, and you can learn from me while I'm just chilling out on the beach. But it sort of shows you what is possible. Everyone can do this nowadays, and that's the power of AI. So AI agents, which is the next thing for 2025, will solve all these complex problems. And there are quite a few big tech companies who now believe that AI will completely take over software engineering. Jensen Huang, founder of NVIDIA, says that 5 years from now, we don't need software engineers anymore. Mark Zuckerberg of Meta says that this year, it will already replace the mid-level engineers. It's remarkable how fast technology is evolving at the moment. Now, if we take this one step further, what we will see this year is agentic commerce, which is basically artificial intelligence meets crypto. Sort of a marriage in heaven. But actually, that's actually really interesting. But what we'll see happening is that these AI agents going about their own business on the internet, buying whatever they want to buy for their owner or for another AI agent or whatsoever. But also very relevant for the insurance industry, because everything that these AI agents buy online autonomously might need to be insured. So there's a whole new market that sort of all of a sudden can open up. We take this one step further and we look at the self-driving cars. I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and I believe that she will not be allowed to learn to drive. Now that sounds ridiculous, but when I was in this Waymo taxi a few days ago, I was like, wow, this is amazing, and it drives better than the Uber driver. So it's only a matter of time before governments around the world will say, we give preference to the robotic driver, because it will have a big impact on the people who die or get hurt or end up in hospital because of car accidents. Again, it's something that will have a big impact on the global insurance industry. So what we're seeing happening is that AI is going through this unstoppable momentum. And as an organization, you're either on board or you're not. But it does require a different mindset. It requires this gestalt shift to look at your organization from a different perspective. Because I believe that by 2030, there will be 2 types of companies. Those that embrace AI and those that no longer exist. So which side are you going to be on? The big question then, of course, is, now what? Now, what do we do? How can we leverage this disruption that's coming our way, this tsunami of change that is coming our way? How can we leverage that and create a society that is better for all of us? Enter the wave forward. This is a framework that I discussed in my book, and which is based on 12 years of research of how I look at organizations, and I'm talking to large organizations all around the world. And it consists of 4 steps. The first step is we need to watch for signals. We need to understand what is going on across the horizon. It's like when you're cycling. You want to see across the road what's coming over the hill so you can prepare for that. It's the reason why I wear an Oura ring, so I can understand how my body operates. So I can collect the data to understand what's going on. And if we have the data, if we can watch the signals, we can become more resilient and understand what's going on. Why is that important? Because we have entered the second half of the chessboard. For those not familiar with the metaphor of the second half of the chessboard, it basically means that on the chessboard there are 64 squares. And if you put a grain of rice on the first square and you start doubling them every time you move to the next square, by the time you reach the last 64th square, you need more rice than the earth has ever produced. By the time you reach the second half of the chessboard, change is so fast and so rapid that it's very, very difficult to keep up. And if you want to keep up, you need to be able to understand the signals. You need to be able to read what is coming so you can prepare for that. So to watch means to collect data. A lot of data wherever you can, ideally in a responsible way. Because data is the new oil. But data, contrary to oil, data actually becomes more valuable the more you use it. And that means that if you need to collect data, it also means that every organization nowadays is a data organization. And if every organization is a data organization, it means that your industry is a data network. Which means you can start to share and trade data and combine data from your industry partners in very safe and responsible ways nowadays. so you can create better products for all your stakeholders. That's the gestalt shift that I'd like you to take. An example of that is the insurance company Swiss Re that really uses all kinds of data and sensors and cameras and satellite information to predict the next climate change disasters. They use additional data sources to understand what's going on. But they can only do that if they have a strong data foundation. Because without the right data governance, the right data quality, the master data management, there's nothing that I've shared so far you will be able to achieve. So the first step that you want to achieve as an insurer is to ensure that your data is in order. And you really would like to do that as soon as possible. Because new industry models are also coming on the horizon. And if you start to watch for signals, then you're able to see these new models that are coming. One of them is a startup called Celsius Pro that uses parametric insurance for climate risks. So there's a fire, house burns down, insurance premiums, the insurance pays out the next day based on validated data sources. Cover is one that uses AI-driven models and predictive analytics for cyber risks. And I'll come to this in a second, because cyber risks are growing rapidly. So if you can find a way to ensure the cyber risk that will have a really big impact on individuals and on organizations and on countries, that's an interesting area to be involved in. And finally, we have Arbol. They use advanced analytics and blockchain technology to create real-time data for, again, parametric insurance. So, for example, you have sensor data from Internet of Things devices. The data is stored on the blockchain, so we know that the data cannot be tampered with. So we know we can trust the data, and you can take action accordingly. So we watch for signals using the data that we have, and then we can take action. Now, the next step is to adapt. Because if we understand what's going on, if we can see what's coming, we can adapt. But we want to do so with a long-term purpose. Because if we're constantly moving with the water, with the wind, and we constantly adjusting our mission, I think it doesn't really work. So you need to have a long-term perspective. And that is especially relevant when it comes to AI. Because all the foundational models that we're building today will be the foundations of the AI that will run our society a few years from now. So we want to have this long-term perspective, whether that is an individual, whether that's as an organization, as an industry, or as a global society. We should have a long-term perspective when it comes to AI. Let me give you an example of what it means to adapt based on the signals. You're probably all familiar with Klarna, the buy now, pay later tech company that has really had a big impact globally. So when they saw ChatGPT being launched, they decided to integrate this. And within a few months, they adapted and they created a ChatGPT-like call center agent. It speaks 35 languages. It saw the call duration going down from 11 minutes to 2 minutes. It saw the call resolution go up by 25%, while keeping customer satisfaction on par. As a consequence, Klarna fired 700 employees, saving $40 million a year. Then they started to integrate artificial intelligence also in their marketing department. So they use it for communications, for image creations, just like I do. They use it for commercials, etc., saving an additional $10 million. They've kicked out 2 very, very big SaaS contracts with, among other, Salesforce. And here comes the kicker. They've stopped hiring altogether. And the CEO of Klarna says that AI already can do all the jobs of all employees within the organization. That's disruption. As a consequence, I believe that AI will destroy 1 billion jobs before the end of this decade. I'll repeat that. I believe that AI will destroy 1 billion jobs by the end of this decade. That's 20% of the global workforce. And that's simply because we live in a capitalist society, and AI and capitalism forms this perfect storm where if your neighbor is doing it, if your competitor is doing it, you have to do it as well. Because otherwise, you will not survive. How we go about this as a society is a really big question that we need to think about all together. especially when we'll see another species entering the workforce very, very soon. Humanoids are coming, and the expectations are that by 2040, we'll have 10 billion humanoids enter the workforce. This is not science fiction. This is today being built in China, and you can buy this humanoid for $16,000. And that's in 2025. So fast forward a few years, and you can understand what's happening. So what you want to do as an insurance company is you want to understand what's going on. You want to be able to adapt and change. And Howden, the insurance company, is really taking a good approach there, where they use they create this incubator for finding and building new products, utilizing the expertise and the data and the resources from across the globe to create new products based on a changing market. That's something that you want to do as well. Now, I promised this topic perspective on the world. For anyone who wants to have a very positive afternoon, now is the time to leave. But I'd rather have you stay, because it's really important, and I don't think I have to repeat this, but for insurance companies to mitigate the risks. So we need to understand what is going on, because the risks are real, and we need to take them serious, especially in a deepfake era. Because everything you see here, all these images of people on these videos, are digitally recreated. And this is already a few months old. By now, the technology is even further improved, that you can really not see anymore what's happening and what the difference are. So what we want to see, we want to understand what that means for individuals, organizations, and society.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
What do you see? That's the question, of course. And good luck telling fiction from reality in the next couple of years. And what you see here, if it wasn't for the purple balloon, you probably thought this was real. It was created in a game engine. And technology is moving so fast that it becomes very, very difficult to distinguish real from fake.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This isn't real.
What is real?
How do you define real?
How do you define real? This is, of course, a scene from the famous movie The Matrix, although it's not. This was a digitally recreated scene from The Matrix, created about 2.5 years ago by Unreal Engine, taking 200 people to work for several months, costing $60 million. I can probably recreate this entire scene in about a week, just by myself, with AI. That's how fast things are changing. And if you thought that polarization, manipulation, and misinformation was bad in the social media era, it will thrive in the age of AI. And our society is not ready for that. And as a consequence, what we'll see happening, but by the end of this year, the world will see $10 trillion in security breaches. So on the one hand, we'll make $20 trillion by the end of this decade, but we're already losing $10 trillion this year. So we have a bit of a challenge there. A challenge offers a new opportunity, and the company Cyber Insurance is using this significant opportunity to really use AI to outsmart AI hacking your organization. And try to find these before they happen, because cybersecurity is going to be very costly if not done correctly. So they use data analytics to enhance the entire cybersecurity underwriting process to make things smoother, faster, and more efficient for their clients. Now, if I haven't scared you enough, I'll give you another example. The English engineering firm Arup, you might have heard of them, was defrauded of $25 million about a year ago. What happened was that a senior director in their Hong Kong office received an email that he had to transfer about $25 million and had to pay several invoices. He was a bit skeptical, so he decided to hop on a board call with 3 board members to discuss what was going on. The board members were there in audio and video, so they had a video call, but unbeknownst to him, all 3 board members were deep fakes. They had recreated the audio and the videos to such a perfection that he believed, and he transferred $25 million the next day. So any organization that deals with money, especially insurance companies, can be a target to this crime. And what we'll see happening in the next year, or years, that this type of crime will explode, because people don't understand that this can happen. Now, Ferrari and the global advertising agency WPP were also targeted, but they took a slightly different approach. So the director of Ferrari received a call from the CEO saying, well, you need to pay this money because we're going through some merger and acquisitions, so you need to pay an X amount of millions. After a while, he started to become skeptical, and he's like, am I really talking to the CEO? So mid-sentence, he stopped the CEO and said, sorry, Mr. CEO, but I need to identify you. What was the book that you gave me last week? And obviously, the criminals immediately hang up because they had no idea. But I wonder, how many of your organizations would you allow someone to question a superior and to stop a superior mid-sentence and ask them to identify themselves? This is not only I think this is a challenge in all organizations around the world where that kind of behavior is not necessarily always accepted. And as a consequence, you can lose $25 million really quickly. So apart from changing your culture, if you want to verify what's going on, there are some organizations that are also using blockchain technology to do that. One of them is Alliance that uses AI to identify fraudulent scams, fraudulent claims, and use blockchain to streamline those claims. So they create one single source of the truth where they know that the data cannot be tampered with. So they can verify, in this case, motor insurance claims and eliminate the opportunities for fraudsters. So the more opportunities for fraudsters we can eliminate, the better it is for the organization. So if we want to watch for signals, we adapt our organization with purpose, we trust but verify. The final step is to empower all stakeholders to drive innovation. And that means we need to be knowledgeable about what's going on. We need to understand how the world is changing and how is it impacting your business line and your industry. It also means that we need to change our culture. We need to create a culture that empowers employees to learn, to adapt, to challenge you. Something that might not come natural to some organizations. It also means we need to become digitally aware. Because yes, we might know how to use a smartphone, and we might know how to use ChatGPT, but do we know what the consequences are of using ChatGPT within your organization, especially the free version? I hope nobody's doing that. So we need to become digitally aware to understand what the implications are of these technologies. And we need to focus on the skills that really matter. You know, root knowledge is outdated. We can get any point of knowledge directly from our phones by talking to ChatGPT or whatever AI. We need to still verify it because it hallucinates, but we can get any point of knowledge at the click of a button. I think instead we should focus on skills that really matter, such as adaptability. And we can't be stuck in our grounds, you know? We need to be able to move and understand and show resilience of how the world is changing. We need to have the analytical skills to understand the new tools, to analyze them, to help problem solve, because the problems are becoming more and more complex. We need to have strategic foresight, what I call futures thinking. We need to see the signals. We need to do scenario planning to understand what's going on, to prepare ourselves for what is coming. We need digital literacy. Not only that we know how a smartphone works, but that we understand what the implications are of humanoids entering your office. And ideally, we need to learn ethics. And I remember, when I was a student at university, I dreaded going to ethics class. But I've learned, and I think it's one of the most important things to learn, that we need to understand how we can integrate these technologies in a responsible manner across our society. So it also means that we need to give employees access to the latest tools. There are tens of thousands of new tools launched almost on a monthly basis. And if you don't pay attention, if you snooze, you lose, we like to say in Australia, you really have a challenge as an organization. An example of an organization that really takes this at the heart is British Petroleum. They gave all their coders access to generative AI coding tools. As a result, they saw a 70% output growth and a 60% reduction in external developers. A really positive impact on their bottom line. Another way you can use technology is what the insurance company AXA XL is doing. They require customers to recreate accident scenes with their smartphone. Almost all smartphones have a LiDAR scanner or something like that on their phone. So you can ask them to digitally recreate the scene of an accident so that your employees can go back in virtual reality and revisit the scene as it was at the moment of the accident. Simply using the latest technologies and the latest tools within your organization, you can really change your business. So here we have it. A continuous movement to create an unstoppable momentum. We watch for signals, we adapt with long-term purpose in mind, we trust but verify, and we empower all stakeholders. And this doesn't only apply to artificial intelligence, this applies to all the technologies that are coming our way that will have an impact on your business model. And you want to leverage this because the future is here. It's just unevenly distributed, as a famous science fiction writer once said. So you want to be the organization that leverages this technology and improves your business so that you are one of those companies that does exist in 2030 and not the other one. That's what we want to achieve. And we are all architects of tomorrow. We are all responsible for building a future that will result in a thriving digital future for all of us. And that requires a gestalt shift. It requires to look at the world from a different perspective. So here we have it. 3 takeaways that you can take home when you go back to the office tomorrow. Start learning the future of business and become skilled of what's going on. Because literally, if you don't pay attention, you will lose out. Whether it is as an individual, as an organization, as an industry, or as a country. Start playing with these new tools. Spend 5, 10 minutes, 30 minutes a day or a week understanding these new technologies. Not to integrate them all in your business, but just to understand what's going on. And finally, start building and integrating the best tools in your business tomorrow, so you can be ready for what's coming. And I believe if we do that, we can really create a thriving digital future. But we have to do it all together. So that's why I've created a summary that you can scan, and you can share that with all your employees so that everyone understands what's going on, so that together you can create a thriving digital future. Thank you very much. I believe in the meantime we have time for some questions. There are microphones around. If you want to ask a question, I can't really see it because of the light, but please stand up, state your name and the company you work for, and then we can answer a few questions. Anyone interested to ask a question? Janet, there's a mic coming.
You know I'm going to ask about the humanoids. It's kept me up all night. How many are currently in the workspace, and what industries do you see them kind of taking over?
So we currently have, I think, about a few thousands of humanoids, because it's still very, very early days. But humanoids can and will literally disrupt every industry. So BMW is already using them in their factory to create cars. In Asia, you have a lot of robots, but also humanoids coming in restaurants. I, for one thing, foresee, and this sounds very depressing, I foresee like aged care facilities run by humanoids. And linked to that, I foresee that there will be a premium on human connection. So if you want to be in an aged care facility where you're not being served by humanoids, but by humans, you're probably going to pay extra. Is this a good thing? I highly doubt it. Is it going to happen? I probably think so. So, from now till 2040, that's 15 years away, we'll move to roughly about 10 billion, if not more, humanoids.
Great. Another sleepless night.
Here in the front, this is another one.
Hi. How does this change the way we look to give advice to our kids, educate our kids? Because it seems like something that's a fundamental change in the way we go about educating. So what do we look for? And I think it moves downstream as well to us hiring trainees in the future too. So what are your thoughts on that?
Very good question. Thank you for that. I think we should focus on skills that encourage empathy, that encourage social skills. Something that unfortunately a lot of teenagers have trouble with due to the pandemic. But focusing on empathy and those really important human interaction skills, I think is really, really important. Now, from a hiring perspective, what I suspect will happen in some industries, take, for example, the legal industry, where they will start using AI to do all the work for the juniors. Because why pay a junior lawyer to do the research that your AI can do within seconds? The consequence of that is that probably a few years down the line, they will figure out that they made a mistake, because now the mid-level people went up and there's no one to replace them. So when you start to hiring juniors or interns in your organization, you need to look for the right skills, the skills that matter that I shared earlier, but also don't rely only on AI, because it will bite you a few years down the line.
Thank you.
Any other question? Yeah, over there.
Yeah, hi, my name's Tim with Burns & Wilcox. Say, you mentioned earlier in your remarks, and I'm not getting it precisely, but the issue around harmony and how we will advance this working in harmony across nations and companies and things of that nature. How do you resolve, and you focus a lot on the next 3 to 5 years, yet when we look at the geopolitical challenges that we have and the nationalistic challenges that we have, how do we resolve the balance of working in harmony in the face of those challenges?
Thank you. It's a very, very good question. And here, I don't necessarily have the answer of how, well, the answer is that we need to collaborate. But in today's world, that's going to be very, very difficult, because we have this arms race going on. And we're certainly not going to trust China. But in this case, I think we need to step over our own shadow and start to interact with other nations who are also moving really fast in developing this really disruptive technology. And we need to collaborate. So the step, as I mentioned at the Paris summit yesterday, of the UK and the USA, not signing the summit declaration, I think is very short-sighted. We need to step over our shadow, and we need to collaborate, because this is something that applies to all of us, not just the USA, not just Australia, not just China. It affects everyone on this beautiful planet. I think that's time for one more question. Yeah, there we go.
Yes. In our business, ethics is very important. It just is. How do you see how we're going to control the ethics of people? Okay. In our society right now, it's just fragmented, but ethics is just so important. How do you see that we can control that piece of the future?
Thank you. Very good question. The answer sounds a little bit simplistic, but I think you being here and hearing me speak is one really good step in the right direction. Because if we don't know about this stuff, we're not going to care about it. And you know, a lot of big tech companies are very good at telling you the good story, the positive message of how it will, improve healthcare, which it will, how it will, make us live longer, which it will, how it will give AI tutors to everyone around the world, which it will. But at the same time, we need to also be aware of the risks that come with it. So I think being here and understanding how the world is changing is the first and foremost step. Because if we are not being aware of what's going on, we can't take action. So hence, share this with as many people as you can, so that as many people understand and hear the message, that we can have a chance to create a thriving digital future, but we all have to be part of it. Thank you very much.